Akela. And let's get rid of this. Good evening, everyone. Here I am doing a retake. I'm Usha Akela, along with Pramila Venkateshwaran. We are the directors of Matwaala. You can learn more about us at www.matwaala.com. And we're really excited to lend our support to They Rise Like a Wave. Just absolutely thrilled to see another anthology dedicated to showcasing Asian poets. So this evening we have 6 readers from the anthology reading with us. And we have one of the editors, Christine Kitano. And to just briefly introduce you, she's the author of 2 poetry collections, Birds of Paradise, published by Lynx House Press, and Sky Country, BOA editions, which won the Central New York Book Award. She's a co-editor along with Alicia Peer Mohammed, whom we missed today. They describe the anthology as by Asian American women and non-binary poets, and she teaches at Brook University and at the MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College. We were happy to see that Stony Brook Association, because Stony Brook supported one of our festivals 2 years ago. The 6 poets we have this evening are Raena Shirali, Yamini Pathak, Ami Patel, Swati Rana, Allison Albino, and Meher Manda. And forgive me if I mispronounce any of those names. And you can correct me when you introduce them later on. So I'm going to hand over the baton to Christine Kitano, because we're in for a treat. And the sooner the introductory part gets over, the better, so we can actually hear the poems. So welcome, Christine Kitano, and we're just waiting to hear from you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you to Matwaala, thank you to Pramila and Usha for hosting us tonight. Thank you to our lovely poets for joining us. I'm sharing my screen right now. You should all see, this is the link to Itasca Books, who is our main distributor. I'll put the link to this in the chat, and then we also have a promotional code that I'll also put in the chat that you can buy the anthology for 20% off for everyone who's attending the reading today. So I encourage you to get a copy for yourselves and just to enjoy the poems. I'll stop sharing because I just want to get into the poems. We'll go in alphabetical order. So we'll start with poet Allison Albino. Allison is a Filipina American poet and French teacher who lives and writes in Harlem. Her work has appeared in Narrative, The Rumpus, Poetry Northwest, the Indiana Review, The Common, and elsewhere. Her writing has received support from the community of writers at Squaw Valley, the Kenyon Review, and Tin House. She studied creative writing at Sarah Lawrence College and has an MA in French literature from NYU. She teaches at the Dalton School in New York City. Please welcome Allison.
Thank you so much for welcoming us. And it's always such a gift to be able to gather such wonderful women and be able to share work. I'm going to start with the poem that was in the anthology, which is a poem about my father. And my father passed away this past February. So I felt that one way to celebrate this anthology and to honor my poem is to honor my father is to be sharing poems about him. So this may take a little bravery on my part and from your part as well to help me get through it. All right, father's advice. My father will reuse the disposable Bic for months until he gets the resistance right. Shaves without shaving cream, uses only water. My father likes his razors dull. When he feels like pampering himself, he lathers up some Irish Spring before sliding the blade over his face. Sandpaper scrape leaving red patches of razor burned. My father likes his razors dull. Afraid of being cut, so he prefers blades blunt, controlling when or if blood will drip from his skin. Growing up, our cutting boards scarred with uneven slits. Even our serrated knives were somewhat dull, so that every bit of English muffin was jaggedly sliced in half, crumbs trailing. I didn't know until I left home that sharpened knives make life effortless. Whenever my father cooks bihun noodles in my home, he complains, I might slice off my finger. Your knives are too sharp. But that's how blades are supposed to be. He throws into the wok the fleshy chunks of pork belly he cut in half the time. When I complain about work, my father tells me, keep quiet, keep your head down, do your job. You're lucky to have one. When a student rails against the injustice of a B+, my father advises, give the kids all A's so the parents don't call and complain about your teaching, get you fired. When I want to march against the new president, he says, what will that change? Nothing. They're more powerful than you. He says it like this country isn't his, even though it is, like the boat isn't worth rocking, even though he's been sailing it for over 50 years. He closes most arguments. If you don't like this country, then get out, go back to where you came from. But I can't. This America is mine. I am not a guest in my home, and I will not cut with these shit knives. Won't hack with a muted blade. I'd rather bleed out. Okay, second poem. I've been working a lot with writing from photographs. So I'm actually going to project, one of the photographs that inspired this poem. Okay, can everyone see the picture?
Yeah.
Okay, super. This poem is called Texas Hold'em. Poker night is every Thursday after dinner, after the baby is put to bed. The three of us sit together, deal out the Texas Hold'em for its turns and rivers. My father was a shark in his youth, and once during an exciting hand, won his opponent's medical school tuition. That cocky student dared to tap my father, who had the better hand. He's happier when I beat him because it proves he taught me well. I'm good at reading straights now, and I've learned to bet ruthlessly against my husband and father. When one of us is low on chips, we all add to that person's pile without saying anything, so we can all keep playing. Even though someone wins and someone loses, someone bets big or nothing at all, we always seem to have enough to keep going. That is what family is. We ante up for each other. I buy my father mace, clip it to his bagpack, as he calls it, in case some racist pushes him on the subway platform or on the street or somewhere my imagination cannot go. I play it out in my head, desperately guessing what could be behind the cards I can't see. Sometimes I even say to the universe, if it is to happen, let it happen to me instead of him, because I could take the beating. All right, second photograph. I had a fire 3 years ago in my apartment when I was also 5 weeks pregnant. So this photograph is from my fire, and it is called Dryer, because the fire was started in the dryer. Dryer. The firemen shattered all the windows to let out the smoke, the glass raining on the pavement. I forgot to put on my shoes, thinking my thick socks and sweatshirt would be enough in November. They flooded water over everything, ripped out the ceiling with axes to make sure fire wouldn't spread. A few hours later, when I came back inside to get my cat, who was hiding in her secret spot behind the piano, there was an inch of water at my feet. I took her, my laptop, phone, my manuscript, and my stuffed animal, a chinchilla, who travels with me as a reminder of home. I left the rest. The dryer lived in the bathroom I revisit often, as if it were a country I knew in another life. My mother's gold necklace was there, the bottle of perfume I wore every day, jasmine, the half-used shampoo bottle, electric toothbrush, frames my best friend made, earrings for going out, eye cream, lipstick. It's easy to lose, really. You don't have to do anything for something to be gone. I did get to keep my baby. I was 5 weeks pregnant and home alone with greasy Chinese takeout when the dryer caught fire. It didn't seem bad at first, and even though the doorman tried to help me by unleashing 2 fire extinguishers, the whole place filled with smoke. It took me a while to convince myself I had to leave. Inside both of us is a drum. What whirs round and round, the satin pajamas, soiled shirt, a baby whose eyes are closed, whose feet and hands reach for the surface of his private sea, hums, persists. We have a noise machine that helps baby fall asleep. And of all the sounds, waves, wind, birds, rain, it is the drier sound that lulls him to sleep. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, hear it, think, fire. I check, my son is sleeping. Thank you. Oh, all the hearts. Thank you. My second to last poem, it's about sleep training a baby. I don't know if any of you had the experience of trying to sleep train a child, but I think it's one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do. So this is called The In-Between of Sleep. As a child, I slept with my mother, where we talk in bed about our house that could fly, our headboard with the buttons needed to send us into clouds, where wings would razor out from our yellow aluminum siding, carry us higher and further, where we'd still have the comforts of brown and served sausages, oversized t-shirts, bare feet, eating rice and meat with our hands. We would be home in Paris, home in Hong Kong, home having tea inside a whale's belly, everywhere home. She'd sing sweet and low, and we'd have the wind of the Western Sea blow over us as we slept together. Even in college, I'd come home and still sleep with my mother, who was already so sick that my father moved her bed to the living room so she could avoid the stairs. So sick, she'd take sedatives to put her to sleep and would cough and cough and cough despite them, cough so much that I could no longer sleep, but I'd listen in case she choked, the pauses in breath. When I left her to sleep in my own bed, I felt like a coward because I couldn't sleep with cancer beside me. I slept with my father, who'd lullaby too. In his songs, owls became owlas, and I could bite whomever into them, Boomer, Benji, Lassie, garage cats, my inventory of pets, long enough to pull us into sleep. He'd sleep at the edge of the bed so I'd have room to spread out, thrash side to side like an angel in snow, and he'd scratch my back until I dozed, and then he'd stop and I'd wake and I'd elbow him to keep scratching, his fingers steady, going for hours, for years. My baby is being sleep trained so that he can sleep through the night alone, and my husband and I can finally reclaim our bed. He wails as if from the 9th circle of hell for 5 minutes. My father says, as if I'm betraying him, "You're doing it the American way, aren't you?" Meaning not the Filipino way, not all in the same bed like we did on Sundays when we all napped on the beauty rest that made my mother proud to afford, sleeping in height order, Papa, Mama, sister, me like bears who had their fill of something better than porridge. We were warned to never tell anyone at school because Americans wouldn't understand how we sleep. Americans would separate us if we didn't agree with their way. If I'm in between, where does that leave my baby? We let my father do naps. He gleefully snatches his grandson from my arms and disappears down the hallway in his socks, flip-flops, and old scrubs. He puts baby down in his bed, rubbing his back until baby gives in to sleep, sucks his thumb, the lullaby aula looping in the background. Okay. I'd love to thank you. This is my last poem. It is a new poem. It is a first draft. I wrote just last week as I've been kind of wading through a lot of grief. This is how I've been feeling. The clocks have stopped for me, all while friends vacation to Rome, take taxis to airports, roll their suitcases, all while students submit their homework to another teacher, giggle in corners, excited a package is arriving for them that day. The clocks have stopped for me. The doctors have moved on to another body, someone else's father, another body to wash and prick and dress and test, another body to incise and suture, another body to drug, another heart, another vial of blood to draw, more platelets to count, another trend to chart. The clocks have stopped for me. I'm still holding my father's cold hand. He departs so fast, I am ready fast, while the world seems to be having lunch. I am penitent ice, whose hands are frozen in an unfinished prayer no one hears, all while the world goes on, writes its poems. The clocks have stopped for me, and my son calls my name while bulleting down the hallway. He's now tall enough to open doors, climb a chair, flip on the light. Wake up, mama, wake up, he squeals. He dims the light when he sees my eyes pain at brightness. Better, mama? What time is it? I really don't know. He climbs into bed with me, spreads his body on my chest, searching for milk I am still making. I don't refuse him. I am told the dead live on in me, but that feels as empty as a stopped clock. Outside in the dark alley, a lamp light flickers while I blow smoke out my bedroom window. I can't tell if the light is dying or coming alive. It's staccato to white, staccato to dark. I have decided this is my father now. My son doles out his graham crackers, one for mama, one for dada, one for papi, like he doesn't know he's gone, as if there's an invisible hand to take it, as if papi is still hungry. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Allison. Those were such heartfelt poems, and the theme of family and belonging comes through so beautifully with all the lovely detail. I was wondering, do you use photographs to ground you as you write some of these poems?
It was actually, writing from the photographs was something that was new. I felt like I could write a poem very quickly with a photograph in front of me, and I found that my only time to write was during the baby's nap time. So photo is fast, and then I could get something down. But that was the photographs have been a recent thing. Sometimes the poems, and when they're poems, they take a little bit longer.
Yeah, especially the dryer poem. You know, you ended up with the metaphor of the dryer and the baby wailing. I mean, that was really very beautifully done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Allison. That was fantastic. All right, our next reader is Meher Manda. Meher is a poet, short story writer, journalist, and educator, originally from Mumbai, India, currently splitting time between Providence, Rhode Island, and New York City. She earned her MFA in fiction in 2018 and was the founding editor-in-chief of the Canopy Review. She is the author of the chapbook Busted Models, and her work has been published in The Margins, Barron Magazine, Los Angeles Review, Sporklet, Hobart Pulp, Peach Mag, Catapult, Epiphany, Cosmonauts Avenue, and elsewhere. A fellow of DreamYard's Radical Poetry Consortium and a Best New Poets and Best of the Net Anthology nominee, she edits for the worker-owned independent publisher Radix Media, teaches at the Rhode Island School of Design, and writes for The Juggernaut. Thank you, and please welcome Meher.
Hello, everyone. Realizing that was a very mouthful bio. I'm sorry, I should have edited it. It's so lovely to be here. I do want to preface by saying that I'm currently, I join you from my bed because I'm nursing a terribly twisted ankle, and my cats are, you know, mid-zoomies, and so they're running around. So if you see a cat like rush behind me, there will be some noise. Unfortunately, but it's so lovely to be here. I haven't done a reading in a hot minute, and so I'm excited to see how today is going to turn out. I'm going to read, my first poem will be from the anthology And, it made sense to start with this one. This is one of the earlier poems I've written. I consider myself primarily a fiction writer who flirts with poetry every few weeks. And so I guess maybe you can tell that from my work, but this is one of the earlier poems I've written, and it's in the anthology. This is Sisters on Gravel. In all the games, we played secret roles you wouldn't want to be caught dead in. Dangerous, swashbuckling butter knife flingers. With our mothers in the kitchen, we took mythical, old-timey folk tales, twisted them in over our heads. We swung genders, played heroes, tucked our skirts between our legs. We disrobed, took showers, and cut through water with leaps and punts like wushu champions, landing clumsily on naked butts. With our mothers in the kitchen, we mixed soap and glycerin and blew rainbow bubbles down to wishing wells, watched them fly deep down below, slinging rocks to measure the danger, daring and rescuing the sine qua non of our existence. Our mothers in the kitchen, we touched gently our plucky teats, compared notes by squeezing between each fingertips our body. We learned to hold by holding the other. We discovered textures, patterns, curves, and edges by walking over our bodies, noting down the twists and turns. Our mothers in the kitchen, we took kitchen playwear, filled model vessels with dirt. We collected rocks, cropped shellings, plant offals, cooked meals for devils. We refused to play woman. Wrote stories with snakes in them. The snakes were our friends. Our mothers in the kitchen deep-fried cornballs to tame our energies, imagined us as mothers in training while we yanked heads off doll necks. We gave puppets crazy eyes, laughing witches-like. We cleaved down plants from strange trees, rubbed their chunks on our shins for magic. We played rough. We kissed roughly. We had to unlearn our kisses to kiss others because we kissed each other with such ferocity. By choking pores, we sucked the planet's air between our mouths and poured it into each other. Our mothers in the kitchen, we loved with our bodies, our lips. We distilled our love in secret homes far into neglected backyards. My sister and I grew to be unwomanlike together, to be everything our mothers in the kitchen were not. So when my sister dropped my hand, she taught me my first lesson of betrayal. When she sieved my name through love notes for a man, our mothers stepped out of the kitchen to let me know. To be wild is to be temporary. Ooh. Thank you so much. Every time I do a reading, I like to think of my lovely peers and audience members as my guinea pigs, and I like to usually read a poem that is entirely unedited and raw as it comes, just to see, like a comic, and everything is comedy anyway, so a little bit like that. So this, I successfully finally wrote a sestina a few weeks ago, and for the last couple of weeks I've been reading it out loud, trying to figure out, where it goes. So this hasn't been edited, but here it goes. This is Death of a Parent. To be a child is to wait for your parent to die. We love into time, will for it to seize its endless cycle, rest all of our hope on a wishbone. Still, the mind mourns its own imagination, intrudes upon a wobbling body the thoughts of a shroud, white like snow, beautiful mercy. Even crying, a glorious undertaking, suspends like a question mark into the uncertain future. Hyper-aware of my limitations, I mark the decay of the bodies that raised me. Imagine that dying can obliterate memory of pain, but blood flows like a merciful offering. It gushes with the salve of release, reminds us of the cyclical nature of life. To my mother, I say, I see you. Your body does not escape my fear. To the country, I say, I am mourning you already, even if you doggedly pursue a path mournful to your genesis. But I'm sorry to say you've missed your mark. Streets and rivers crack open to reveal the rot in your body. Your heart is bedrock. It does not quiver with the deaths of those you call children. We're damned to live this cycle, kin of an absentee mother, your apathy is merciless. How did I reach this conclusion? The stories, they said mercy is a mother's offering. They cast upon your contours shades of mourning, draped you in our mother's fabrics to match your season cycles, said, look at the map closely. Look how it bears the marks of a woman trying. They called this land mother and said all death is clemency. It will only take us back to the lap of her body. So when I hear my mother's cracked knees, I think of the disembodied future awaiting this country. On some nights, I ponder over the mercy of a good ending. You see, some relationships are best clarified in death. I can bet it will become easier to think of the good times in mourning. The whole timeline will naturally condense itself. Only bookmarks will endure. Life is only meant to be lived that way, in cycles of survival and souvenirs. So why should we demand a cycle different for this country that is woman, that is mother's aching body running its course? I have already drafted an elegy that will be remarkable, certainly more flourished than this poem, mercifully forgiving of all mistakes, plaintive but not sentimental, mournful in beats. The same elegy will work no matter who dies first. We don't even have to recycle the pronouns, what a mercy. At the funeral, I promise to hit all the marks. I will remember love in death and mourn accordingly. Cry for my mother or this country, cry for the lifeless body. Thank you so much. My third poem is a poem that I wrote during a very tongue-in-cheek exercise. And I've never been able to read it out loud because I've never found the perfect, audience body. And so today I have, and you will find out why from the title. So this feels like the perfect group of people to read this poem to. It's called Pandit Nehru Lights Lady Mountbatten's Cigarette. God, I love women who smoke. Disclaimers be damned, a white cigarette hanging loosely on their ever so parted lips, maybe reddened from attention or gray like the soot nimble fingers let fall to the earth. Dust to dust stirs the strangest imaginations. Men shiver in the wake of smoking women. Their strong arms sizzle at the crackle of cigarettes in heat, their brows sweaty with confusion. How do you tame a woman who chooses to smell like roasted tobacco, who dares nicotine deplete her of all living? That's a woman with one foot out the door, who walks the streets in traffic and blows smoke into the acrid, polluted air. That's a woman who horrifies my mother, and you all know how much I love that. What a painting. Women who search the ravines of their backpacks to fish a pack, pull a slender one with long, waiting fingers. Women who saunter to the streetside panwalas under our godly sun, who accept their purchase with skilled hands that know both receiving and holding. Women who shuffle close to strangers, mouth full with requests. How their hands close into flowers to strike light from a matchstick. How their thumbs press the lighter's wheel. How their necks bend in kindness as if to accept a blessing. I love how these women commit to their addiction in shameless display. How they walk the streets of my country willing a challenge. True troopers, bearing the weight of gendered behavior on their shoulders sunk from nicotine use. Aunties walk past angling to shut the eyes of their still virgin-eyed daughters, but the damn smoking girls smell so good. One lights up the entire street with her insouciance. I hope the women who smoke know how much I appreciate their sacrifice, that I wish for them deaths peaceful and painless. I wish them kindness from strangers and apathy from judgmental aunties. I hope they know that I'm rooting for them to quit and that I thank them for their years of service. Know this, when I see that photo, Pandit Nehru and Lady Mountbatten paired in white, their cigarettes inches away from each other. I care not for the comments on character, the soliloquies on shame, or the diatribes from history. I care not for intimacy and its want, or who has come to be shamed since. I only see a woman so powerful, she made the leader of a virile country bow to light her fire. Thank you so much. I'm gonna read my last poem. This is a shorty, and I'm gonna conclude with this one. This is, since somebody mentioned Bombay, this is.
We can't hear you, ma'am.
You're muted.
You got muted, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. This is a rain poem, my last poem for the evening. The rains catch me by surprise. One season begets another. It is summer still, though the sparrows have been dead for many years. And outside, the flowers that once bloomed have now shrunk with age. Their colors poured out like grief and swallowed whole by a parched earth. Meanwhile, sun settles like blisters on dry skin. Everything hurts, even attention. So bright is the day that even the sorry are found exposed under its spotlight. There is no way to walk the streets, escape the buildings and their long faces. What bird sits on the roof, its precisive eyes keeping check? It doesn't matter. We are caught. The dead sparrows are forgotten. Heat enters the tiny room like electricity, sieving bodies from one another. Light escapes into the dark like orange slits from under the door with fangs, its sweltering gaze intact. But a summer that begins must end. Soon the rains are called, but by then we become spoiled, rotten under the watchful eyes of soul. The cold water offers little reprieve. Its fall lands like a whip on our reddened backs. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chance to be here. I'm excited to hear all the other poems. Thank you all.
Thank you, Meher. Thank you for, I noticed that most of the poems you read were kind of subverting notions of femininity and kind of, calling gendered behavior into play. I wanted you to maybe share a few thoughts about, if I may call it, your feminist writing, and is this a deliberate choice as you write your poems that you do this kind of dutifully, and what are some of the other themes that you also tackle?
Thank you so much for that question. I think it's not a deliberate exercise, but whether in my fiction or poetry, I write, I think, a lot about two prevalent themes. I think I write about femininity and the state of the country vis-a-vis femininity because of sort of the extended symbolism of it all. But I think that is the kind of work that I think that is how my mind thinks, and a lot of it is trying to establish that there is a clear line that sutures the gendered body with a very with an autocratic state. I think that's the kind of relationship that my writing is keen to explore. These set of poems, barring the Sestina, from my debut collection in progress that I'm kind of currently revising. And so that is very much, I think of it as the memoir of femininity as a prolonged chapter. And so that's the idea for that collection. But I think it's definitely not deliberate, but I find it very exciting to write about women's bodies and the way their bodies respond to autocratic states. And I think that's where the tension lies for me, at least in writing. But
Thank you. So we're on to the next.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was wonderful. All right, so our next poet is Yamini Patel. Ami is a queer, diasporic South Asian poet and young adult fiction writer. She is a Pushcart Prize nominee and a Tin House Workshop alum. Ami's poetry is published in various places, including the West Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, and They Rise Like a Wave, an anthology of Asian American women poets. And she has a website, and I'll put the bio in the chat. Welcome, Ami.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Matwaala, for hosting this, and thanks to Christine and Blow Up Press on the anthology for publishing my poem and just investing in these voices of Asian American women and non-binary folks. So I have a few poems for you all. As you know, in my bio, probably is no surprise, I write a lot about queerness, family, and diaspora, and so there's a lot of grief, always a lot of grief, but when I'm still enough and silent enough, it's also entangled with deep joy. So that's my intro. I'm going to read my poem from the anthology. It is called Faltering and Yet. My parents call me Chuckly, little bird, their firstborn, flitting through the channel of my mother, emerging as shiny forehead and warring gaze. I arrive in late spring, but that first winter comes too soon. The three of us frigid and unfamiliar with Philly, far from grandparents and great-grandparents and stores full of spices with names I still only know in Gujarati. I don't sleep. I shriek and spittle, I confound, a sharp avian thing speaking in tongues. My father returns home later and later, his eyes closing on the couch before 9 p.m. dinners, and me sprawled on him, both bodies sinking to the tunes of tired. My mother is overwhelmed, more so than she lets on. The fridge hums incessantly, the halogen sallows our faces. The small TV stays on during feedings, nap times, diaper changes, while she cooks grainy brown bodies shimmy across the screen. My first memories are of beehive hairdos and benevolent mustaches, the croons of Letta and Asha echoing through the lonely. Months go by. My first moves emerge thunderously with the conviction of a boxer. My father tells me decades later, he was afraid to hold me. His fears fused together like hot metal and gilded them to the smallest vessel in his eyeline, to me, the one bearing his name, the one still trying to crack through those same fears of body, of being, still learning how to fly, sore and tumbled by the feet of it all. So this next one, the next two poems are about my grandmother, my dadi, or around her. This next one is called I Dream I Don't Kill My Garden. I palm my soil and it blooms the truth. I have enough for dinner, a salty curry with roasted squash, dark bitter greens, and of course, garlic. I hug a somber tree and it perks apples like pink balloons. I wake up thirsty to a swaying bhajan of rain, which means my seedlings are ready. Butterflies and red-necked birds come back, gravelly carpenter bees too. They don't sting. I cascade salt to shrivel the dark bulge of slugs, confound cabbage moths with a single wave. My grandma visits and her cataract-glazed eyes clear like a late spring field. She sees it all. The stippled sword ferns, puckering mint, dusty purple beans staircasing to sky. She is proud, even though she won't say it. But she can't deny I have always been hers, sand-blasted blood and desert-cradled bone, her stubborn root. For her, I demand lush. My harvest will be a succulent bridge, and we won't have to feign full anymore. Also, thank you to my friends for being on this virtual poetry reading with me. Okay, so this next one is called No Less Than Blood, No More Than Kin, and it came out of a random factoid that mosquito migrations are changing because of climate change. And so this is where it led me. No less than blood, no more than kin. Your north vein pricks the map away from blight and blizzard. Expectation thaws your generational line. Vertebrae, a stack of patient villages, fleshed by the quotidian. Sun-dried grass, clay-red sweat, cow dung, fraying cotton, a river that deserted itself, even as you miraged the delight dancing past. It was 5 matlis on her head. No, 7, no, 10. More clay pots than grandmother at that point. After all, she was just a young woman then. When does myth become mischief? The buzzy art of shooting the shit, kapatamar, aka, Google couldn't translate this. Dadi, her first friends, old and precious chipped teacups, tipped laughs, airy swats. There weren't as many mosquitoes back then. Wikipedia divulges climate change stretched migrations. Now they pack and prod this unassuming desert for blood. You swallow a chalky peach malaria pill, settle into dreams, unzipped cosmic limbs, such ordinary diaspora feels ribboning your neck, eye, the jammy beams of the sparking night, your very own Chitra Ganesh painting. You don't know, you've never known if you're upright or if you're orange. Buckets of crushed coins from all over guillotine your memory's entrance. Tindora leaves crawl around each other like your uncles at the airport waving, "Hello, Beti, hello, come, come." You wake, clawing at your arms, the unrelenting green sewn into you like the final stitch in the sari blouse they will gift you on your last day here. Okay. Oh, this is a short poem in Red Rock Review. These poems, some of them are online. You can go on my website and click on all sorts of links. And then I have some published in, physical publications. This is another sad queer poem. It's called The Edge of Worship. Morrissey insists some girls are bigger than others. Here I am, rum smothered and bleary as a cactus. My 3rd bottle this week, and it's only Thursday. I am possible only in a ravine at twilight. I am possible only in the doorway of desire, and she is not a simcha, gnawing my hinges. Under the specter of night, I imagine her nipples glowing purple, like the dirt I ate in India as a child. Shehnai and salty foreheads blurred the dusty street at my uncle's barat. I carved my nails into the dark ground, tasted the freedom of the forbidden eclipsing my mouth. Okay, I have 2 more poems. Actually, no, I'll just read one more poem. Yeah, I want to give this one space. So much of my poetry, like I was saying, and honestly, much of my life is grappling with how I cultivate freedom as a queer person. And ironically, and against my younger self's openness to it and imagination for it, so much of that freedom has come from being a parent. So this is dedicated to my firstborn, Sancho. It's called Wanting is the Way to Free. And it's in Beloit Poetry Journal. And it's actually inspired by this quote by James Baldwin. I'm saying I have nothing to prove. The world also belongs to me. I'm here to lick this precious earth like a sugar-rimmed bowl of berries. I'm here to grasp it grandma close, like a bundle of lavender. Let it tickle each of my 14 nose hairs while I inhale. I want to grab its arms and dance, not to some snooze stuffy waltz, but to a 90s bump and grind, a hip shimmylicious cumbia, a bounce phrase in Bhangra, or all the tomorrow harmonies that I hum always feel in my more than 5 senses. I want to line up all of my gel pens and say, hello, beautiful colors. Yes, I will see you in my daily walk. Then I'll eat with my mouth open and we'll share in this portal. I will preen and wear soft materials made of what I don't really know because I haven't spoiled myself. Turns out I'm no stranger to scarcity, that lint-lined pocket we're sewn into, but I'm unstitching. This dimension is mine, and other dimensions too. But I don't mean mine like ownership. I mean mine like equilibrium, like surrender, like putting my hand in the ocean, and when I pull it out, the salt and sand stick to me, and I can always put it back in. Watch all of my possibilities swirling until next time, and next time. I rearrange the drying grime and tug it onto me, like a rough flank of a rhinoceros at play. Thank you.
Thank you, Ami. Those were such beautiful poems. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges you face writing about family, because many of the themes were about like things that you heard in the family, or images of family, what was said, etc. So what are some of the challenges in writing about family, especially when you're trying to define yourself vis-a-vis the family?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think there are so many piecemeal memories that I'm working with. And so it's almost like finding myself at the precipice of these memories and then looking out and wondering. And I think that place of wondering and curiosity is really where my imagination as a poet can just be free. And so there might be a kernel of a family story or a family half-truth, or something I overhear that isn't indirectly said to me that I think I think that's where it can be shaped and reshaped from. And I think part of being queer is really being able to imagine and reimagine so many of these narratives. And so I think that it comes back to that as well. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you, Ami.
All right, thank you all. Our next reader is Yamini Pathak. Yamini is the author of the poetry chapbooks Atlas of Lost Places and Breath, Fire, Water, Song. Her poems have appeared in Poetry Northwest, Vita Review, Waxwing, and elsewhere. She is a poet in schools for the Geraldine Dodge Foundation, serves as poetry editor for Inch Micro Chapbooks published by Bull City Press, and as production assistant for Tupelo Quarterly. Yamini received her MFA in poetry from Antioch University, LA, and has received support from Vona Voices and Community of Writers. Born in India, she lives with her family in New Jersey. Welcome, Yamini.
Thank you for that, Christine. And I was just so thrilled to be a part of this anthology, and a lot of my friends are in there, and I haven't really met any of the poets today, but it just sort of solidifies this feeling of community that I already felt just being in this anthology. And thank you, Matwaala, for hosting this meeting. I'll read 2 poems from the anthology, and then I'll read a few newer work. Pakad, Hindi. Noun, signature musical phrase, identifies a raga in North Indian classical music. Verb, to hold, catch, capture, cling, preserve, protect. We were taught our languages were crude. Imagine a ghazal, the verses threaded into a labyrinth, each couplet a shifting tunnel that leads to the winking jewel at its heart. Witness a mushaira in the dim lanes of Ghalib's Delhi, the passing of the lamp in a circlet of poets, as each recites, the interjections of wah, wah, all that is capsuled in the pearl of a single syllable. We were convinced our table manners were savage. We sat crisscrossed anyhow on the floor, families loud, children opening their mouths to a loving invasion, rice grains pinched in the beaks of their mothers' fingers, the trickle of juices warming the purse of our palms before they entered the realms of our tongues. We grew to despise our sun-blissed skins. We believed fair was lovely, applied unguents designed to exhibit our lovely plastic selves to the world. Our gods remained toned by dusk, charm divine, flute between lips, jaunty peacock feather tucked in his curls, Nataraj, arms akimbo, feet drumming in cosmic ballet, face and chest smeared in ash. Kali, tender and terrible, color of your worst nightmares. Our pre-dawn ragas, still dark-threaded, still throb with the sweet wet of morning mist. This next one is called Ahimsa, which means non-violence. And it has an epigraph by Terence Hayes. It is not enough to love you. It is not enough to want you destroyed. If someone loved me, then cut the birds from my tongue, expeller pressed the air from my lungs. One wing at a time dismembered me. Could I look back with the lotus eyes of compassion? See how they stain themselves, gouge and bleed? Could I join them in the dark room, dip negatives in a chemical bath, peg the damp curls of nascent photographs from our lives on a clothesline to drip dry overnight? Would you judge me a fool if I said, my love is a parched well that never quits reaching for the aquifer? Born under a water sign, I fight different. Canyons are hewn by a licking stream, a tongue whirring stone after stone like loosened teeth. My love song is a blood song, survival song. The bird box by night sings for us both. And this next one is a sort of looking back to my maternal lineage. And it's called All the Skin We've Traveled. Do you recall how we held on, bore the weight of father's body, never let him collapse to the floor, released him when it was time, sprinkled 108 offerings, invoked a safe passage of fire for him, and afterwards grew into an invitation to lean, grace to accept the weight of mother's tears. And all those milk-fogged midnights, we carried babies to the breast, anchored those trembling chicken necks, sated their suckling. Never an infant slipped through sleepy fingers in a woolly dawn. And how we bloomed into hothouses of tenderness, shivered in recognition of terrain where we belong. Those fields of intimacies we won via delicate-fingered diplomacies. Aren't we giants, truth tellers, soothsayers, born with maps etched into our palms, winding through the salt desert, pink sandstone and sunflash skirts with embroidered mirrors, an oasis of mothers, and through another forked path, a migration back to the apple orchards of Kashmir. The snow-fed waters of the Jhelum course through veins that ribbon out to our foremothers and our daughters' daughters. This next one is sort of an exploration into silencing and silencing of girl children, which I personally experienced as well. It goes, "What a good girl," said everyone, while I filled my larynx with butterflies and sucked my thumb to hold them there, the fan of wings beating in the space between two words. Alone then, leaning into the desert, I learned the color of thirst, the lurching gait of camels, the crunch between teeth in the aftermath of a sandstorm. Pursued peacocks with their bottom-heavy strut, dragging emeralds in the dust. How lucid, the studded throat of night, innocent of city lights. And this final poem is it's a list poem. It's called Red Things. A chat on a moonlit terrace where one person is more in love than the other. Both laugh, each sounds different. Boatmen struggling in the biceps of a river. Some memories are redder than others. I watched my brother beat another boy on the playground because he called our father a bastard. Saw the boy's body crumple like a paper flower, his nose spurt crimson blooms. Nobody knew what a bastard was. Labor pains. The scent of street food wafting up from the vendor's cart as he puts together a paper cone of puffed rice, slivers of onion, cucumber, tomato and hot green chilies, lemon juice and mustard oil. The tide of saliva that rises in the mouth. This is not a red memory. It's definitely green, lime green, raw mango green. Ribbons in shiny black hair, swinging braids. A man who carried newspapers, magazines, bestsellers, and comic books wrapped in a white sheet, a door-to-door visiting library. He smelled of paper and ink, the rush of blood to my face when I opened the door. Train journeys, hot wind, paddy fields, egret, and buffalo. Towns with names like Itarsi and Manmad Junction, where you will never get off, but whose names you murmur in time with the rhythm of the rails. Scalding hot chai numbs your tongue. Coal dust from the steam engine blows back in the wind. Take care it doesn't get in your eyes. Some of it is still on fire. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yamini. I was struck by so many of the imagery in your poems. I can't cite all of them, but bloomed into hothouses of tenderness, filled my larynx with butterflies. Such surprising and beautiful images, body crumple like a paper flower. Just wanted to congratulate you on just this beautiful usage of language with your sense of the visual. And what I felt as I was listening to your poems, that you're not unafraid to take on big battles in your poems. You're looking at cultural markers, colonial assumptions, and you kind of take them head on. And I wanted to ask you, and then you ended with very, very intimate poems, very personal poems. And I wanted to ask you thematically, when you're writing a poem, what draws you to the core of that poem? Or do you start off with the notion that you want to tackle something and tackle a theme, or what draws you? What is it in a poem that takes you on that journey? So.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think what draws me is the fundamental question at the heart of the poem that I'm struggling with, or something that I haven't quite been able to resolve in my life, and then I start to write around that particular question or issue which is bothering me. And I'm not quite looking for resolution, but I guess a way to arrive at acceptance. Yeah, so I guess that's what draws me into the poem, and I often end up being surprised myself as to where it takes me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next reader is Swati Rana. Swati is a writer and professor. Her creative work has appeared in Asian American Literary Review, the Brooklyn Rail, Crazy Horse, Diacritics, Granta, the Paris Review, Wasafiri, and elsewhere. She is author of Race Characters, Ethnic Literature and the Figure of the American Dream. She teaches courses in Asian American Studies, Comparative Ethnic Literature, Experimental Poetry, and Racial Form at UC Santa Barbara, where she also directs the American Cultures and Global Contexts Center. Welcome, Swati.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Christine, for inviting me, and to Matwaala and Pramila and Usha for hosting. And I mean, I'm still sort of, my breath is still taken away by this poetry, and just, I feel like there's a real intimacy to this moment, which I'm appreciating, even though we're on Zoom, so I can almost feel us in the same room together. So thank you for that. It's really an honor to be part of the anthology and reading with all of you. I'll begin with my poem in the anthology. It's called Plane Ride After 9/11. Sash is half down to block the sun, coming out instead of its reflection in the ocean. Waves are still moving minutely like sand. A boat blemishes hills of water, more boldly shaded by the drag of clouds. Where ocean ends and sky begins, can't say. A heavy ledge, then lighter gray retreating. Clouds mount the horizon, soundless, aroused by a wide, mad expanse. The coast intrudes, casts an edge, but the sun is driving up the mouth of an estuary. This is where we begin to exist. Upon the fetid soil, its long cultivated skin, the effort of order exerted on a landscape. A furious shine passes over lakes, ponds, metal siding. The plane slants aside till the earth's face meets mine. Horizon climbs up, then down again through clouds. Cavernous breath, spit out, we break from land traces, a bridge sky. The hot cabin is like waking from a restless night, window closed too tight. Suddenly I see another plane fly in the opposite direction, a cult mirror of the sky briefly revealed to contain our own precarious situation. I see myself peering from below a half-downed sash, brown skin, a kind of terror. So I wrote that poem right around September 11th, and I can see all sorts of edits I would make now, but it belongs to a particular moment, I think, when brownness was becoming a site both of subjection and also coalition. And so I was, I think, trying to think through how the color of our skin shapes our sense of being, especially in these hyper-surveilled spaces like airplanes and airports, and you know, how whether the poem could carve out a different story through these meditative inner worlds. So that was a while ago, and now I've been working and reworking a project that travels up the Western seaboard, partly based on some of my hikes in this area. And it's kind of an apocalyptic landscape, and a lot of questions of survival and regeneration come up. And so, and also speaking from and writing on unceded Chumash lands and waters, I'm trying to work out the acknowledgement in poetic form. And so I'll read a few poems, and they're in two voices, and I call them M and C. And in some ways, it's a mind divided against itself, but also mother and child, and the generation caught in the logic of me and mine that immigrates and reproduces colonial violence in the diaspora, And then the sea as the seer, speaking from the future and trying to hold the present sort of accountable to itself. And I'll read this new portion I'm working on where I'm mapping this myth of Samudra Manthan. And it's an episode from Hindu mythology in which devas and asuras sort of churn the ocean, and they bring in a mountain and a snake, and they're trying to extract its treasures. And I was trying to map that onto sort of the short-sighted work of offshore drilling and the problem of what to do with the decommissioned platforms, which is, when you go walking at the coast here where I live, you can see these platforms sort of dotting the landscape. So I'll read a series of a few poems. It's part of this kind of conversation between these voices. Everything taken. To leave well enough alone and well is never the option conquerors exercise. A mountain ripped from its roots, roped around by a snake, churned for 1,000 years by devas and asuras, never thinking to ask the ocean. Vishnu as turtle arrives to prop up this whole sinking enterprise, which by now has taken the form of inevitability. There can be no other way. The act decides its outcome. Winners and losers arrayed on two sides strain for as many years as it takes to forget colors, variegations of sound and creature, hearing only the slop and tell of the rod, and the thrill of discovery that takes out what has always lived under. This pull grows so strong, there's no other part. I am either devil or God, pressed to either side upon my crossing. Or ocean, reborn with my birth, knowing your mother and where you return. When the spoils are apportioned, the mountain rooted, when Vasuki takes his place around Shiva's neck, and out comes the goddess snake with her quiet tongue, waves cresting and cresting in old time. When what comes is crude. Hold to this sorry trunk of pipeline jutting from the sand, to the accumulated wealth of that extraction and its plastics, or remake the pristine horizon and ship these mistakes to places poor enough to bury them, or make what invertebrates make of these long steel columns, thick submarine gardens edged by fish, where even shadows cycle life, predator, prey, hiding in dark stripes, or cut out and remove this rig immediately from view before it smells terrible. Short-sightedness blinds other senses. Taking something out of water, you lose iridescence, feel the layers shrink and corrugate. When the corporation is as large as I can muster, you think small. This then is your legacy, burying every human mistake. These human signs, how you carried on with your old habits under this last eucalyptus polished by sun, setting picnic tables, firing grills, fists full of condiments, shoring the whole experiment against the storm. You looked out often, searching under your brim for a vision. The ugly platforms show best after sun has set. Seaweed pops little fears, little accusations. Sandhoppers track their stores along the rack, leap when disturbed. The water makes a mirror on the sand, flecked with human signs, that rainbow flare. I know I depend on this. Know also regrets, refusal, obstinate glare that looks at the world as we have made it. A slap in the face of our own extraction. Ways of marking. This wave scribbles around boulders. This cluster of birds sits like rain on water and flies off, leaving a brief reflection before water seeps and nothing of sky is seen. This bird bites sand, unconcerned for how they disappear. Pockmarks, tiny unnamed creatures in its searching wake. Godwit, dowager. You surely notice these are all marks that vanish? Even searching birds make brief characters. They look fearless and not the least bit wet. Maybe you imagine yourself also lightly moving, name fading with footsteps, that you might weather this down to the waves capped in white. Before the wind writes into my skin stories of devastation, Valela draws a purple sail, itches where exposed, breakers noise, white is the sum of insensate power. I lick salt wounds, this can cure, or abscess. Thank you.
Thank you, Swati. Wow. It is a very large subject that you've taken up. I'm really amazed at how you are working through acknowledgement, land acknowledgement in poetic form. And, asking the very difficult questions about, what is the legacy that we want to leave behind? And, exploring the theme of extraction, through using the mythology of the asuras and the devas. And, I think your poems really look at the two parts of this question, and which is, the beauty of nature and all this that is vanishing before our eyes. So you have both of them. So I'm wondering, you're not going to resolve this, obviously, the poetry. I don't think so, except in this last poem, you had a final line that had the word cure in it. Do you think we can sort of edge towards some kind of feeling that, we can be rescued? Do you think your poems might move in that direction?
I think I think that's why I settled on two voices, because I couldn't decide. And so I love this question because you really hit on the heart of the problem. And I love that way of thinking about the poems as like working through a problem. And so there's the cure, and then there's the abscess. And partly because I think I just found that the voice had to fragment itself to account for both possibilities. Because it's like, I think in the moment we're in, we have to be able to hold them both. And yeah, and I think that I don't think there'll be a resolution. I think it's hard to read the poems. I'm still getting used to it, but they're very much like two voices on either side, and they don't come very close. But I think that's part of the challenge of, I think, imagination in our moment, right? Is like, there's this great devastation and we're bearing witness. And then while we're doing that, we have to be able to hold some kind of hope. So thank you for that.
It's really exciting what you're working on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Swati. Our final reader tonight is Raena Shirali. Raena is the author of 2 collections of poetry. Her first book, Guilt, was released by Yes Yes Books in 2017 and won the 2018 Milt Kessler Poetry Book Award. Her second book, Summonings, was published by Black Lawrence Press in October 2022 and won the 2021 Hudson Prize. Raena is also the recipient of a Pushcart Prize, a Gulf Coast Poetry Prize, a Discovery Prize from Boston Review, and many more. She holds an MFA in poetry from The Ohio State University and is an assistant professor of English at Holy Family University. The Indian American poet was raised in Charleston, South Carolina, and now lives in Philadelphia. Welcome, Raena.
Thank you so much, Christine. Just want to make sure that my volume is okay. Can y'all hear me sufficiently? Okay. My neighbors are having weekly band practice, which I forgot happens. So if you hear like a Cure cover happening behind me, I apologize. Hopefully it illuminates the work in some capacity. So wonderful to be reading with fellow anthology contributors and with Matwaala. This has been a lovely, lovely reading. Thanks for sticking around. I'm going to read 3 poems today. I'm not going to start with the one that appeared in They Rise Like a Wave. as it's kind of a tough one to open with. So instead, I'll read you a poem that just needs a very tiny bit of context, and that is that my second book is entirely grounded in engaging with the subject of witch hunting in India. So really specifically dealing with a couple regions that you're going to hear named and that you're probably familiar with. I think Swati's reading feels like a really nice entry point into the content that I'll be engaging with here. Throughout the poems, you're going to hear me grappling on the page with this very question. What does it mean to engage in docupoetics and in poetry of witness, while also being critical of a colonialized and imperialized and racialized imaginary? This poem is called Before Plantations, Women Rustle the Brush Together. Cloth slings bursting with nuts and berries, wound around a length of bamboo. Here, Dayani forage, are but women. They sit together, feet dangling over roadside ditches, sharing stories of men who stand almost too tall, craning their necks skyward as if to project a peacock's air, male bird, all preen and chosen. There are warnings of those who make shadows broad as buildings. What did it mean to sit alone or in groups? A woman lights a candle and my imagination is a failure. Or a woman sits alone, cheeks red with sweat, and the color red doesn't signal. There are solitudes I don't have to interpret, no metaphor for her joy. And if I am aligned with anyone in Jharkhand, how can I say it's not with men, shaded safely at a distance, making observations? Here, the art of taking note. The second poem is a tiny bit longer, not actually that long, just uses a lot of white space. I'll pause when there are section breaks. I wrote this on Ganesh Chaturthi. I don't think there's any other real context you need. I will say that in the book, I use the word Dayan or Dayani. It is one of many words in several like regional dialects, right? That is used to accuse a woman of being a witch. I do think it's important to note that if and when you hear the word in my poems, and as the book sort of frames it, I don't use the word to mean witch. I use it to mean a woman who is accused of being a witch, which I just find is an important distinction to make. God of new beginnings, I celebrate you poorly. No vendors or busted star fruit in my dreams, and I can't tell my own shell from a tamarind. I know not everyone is so lucky. Not everyone is tricked into unwinding weeks of fast and give. It's true, I'm surviving in the land of failed festivals, setting aside whole days to pray. I've offered what I can, and no, it's not enough. Night did not fall with my heart in summer, and I turned towards smoke to feel less, spent my days discussing, is it possible for a white partner to fully see me? Color, that spectrum, his eyes closed and groping for what in the dark. No violence in solitude, another mantra, a lie. I pace the house followed by a cloud of mosquitoes. I keep trying to reach you, sister. Some would call that endless searching love. You're in the dark, or you are your own source of light, and either way, it is dusk or not when you leave home, lamplight, shadow or glow of yourself. If to be loved is to be seen, to you I am holding out my hand. I repeat, we glow darkly. My love turns from me, won't say why. Nights I am closest to you, sister, in sobriety, making lists of our similarities, a framed recipe of all the cliches, the edges of everything suddenly sharpen, guitar strings seeming long, thin knives, leaves harassed by wind while they're just trying to vine themselves to something stable. It's September, and I wish of this mind an eraser, September, and feet carry the body unwilling to the pharmacy counter. September, when I ask to stop forgetting, even as I pray to black this out. Other nights burrow into sheets so white they're transparent, the quilting underneath visible. This, a poor metaphor for reading up on your village. You're there, being seen, but only barely and for naught. I'm tracing stitching with a nail, waiting to feel cut. Night and I walk down the street in the shadow of him protected. Yes, security is an illusion. Yes, I feel secure, arrive home sometimes unscathed, and of that, am ashamed. No women are allowed to be suns, no unfurling gold behind a rain-dark cloud, no Dian a metaphor, no goddess for the sick, no woman in no country is not fielding some nonsense she didn't ask for. And without my summoning, nonetheless, here it is, invoked, the question of asking, who gets to, who answers, who is free, and where to speak. Just one more piece for y'all. Thanks so much again. The last piece I'll read is the one published in the anthology. I will say buckle up for it. It's not the easiest poem. Throughout this collection, I've excerpted from anthropological research and a variety of texts that explore the concept of the witch philosophically, and that also think critically about the ethics of making art that engages with the suffering of others. And so a lot of material in the poems is bracketed on the page. This poem includes bracketed material, but you can't see it unless you're holding the anthology. So my way of indicating that I'm playing with received language is I'll point up. And that means this text is bracketed on the page. Thus, this is research being pulled in. And this poem also does have a paired piece of research with it. In all my work, I'm interested in thinking about the ways that India and America have similar and different, of course, engagements with misogyny, I suppose I'll say broadly. And before this poem, there's a Thomson Reuters finding that appears that found that India is the world's most dangerous country for women due to the high risk of sexual violence. And the only Western nation in the top 10 of the same list was the United States, which ranked third. This poem is called Lucky Inhabitant. Failing to conjure even distant relatives, I know not which women precede me. Believe all this pain is at least our own. On my lap, experts theorize. Witchcraft is no longer a personal matter. state plainly, the women had nails driven into their foreheads, and full up now with steel and sides, and a list of weapons wielded against us, am nauseous and taking it personally. Though at least am not asked to detail my assault on television, holding my chin up for photographers, dubbed icon, and simultaneously driven out of the nation. Yes, you might say this makes me one of the lucky inhabitants. Yes, here there are no jackfruit trees, but in a chamber, the semicircle of men had red eyes, the kind of eyes that saw no reason and were filled with cruelty. And somewhere online, I am blamed for not remembering. Yes, gone now my willful ascension, the stairs, his room, and I don't fight back, know what fate awaits women who protest too much, no matter dialect or country, the question is the same. He Johnny, they ask in the motherland, and who knows, here we throw up our hands and it isn't in prayer. There's blood in the soil, so they call it filth, blood on our legs, so they call us gone. They're not wrong, and they will not be fooled, won't take it back. It's night, and the jackfruit trees close in. There's chanting in the distance. Who owns this world? Thank you.
Thank you, Raena. Am I saying your name right? Or is it Raena?
It's Raena.
Raena, thank you. Thank you, Raena. I think I was so mesmerized, I forgot to take notes.
Oh, that's okay. It's late in the evening.
I normally do that. I just take notes as, poets are reading. And I think I was alerted to your work right away because in my last book titled "I Will Not Bear You Sons," one of the poems is about witchcraft, and I got very deeply interested because you took the subject back to India. It's something that I never thought of, and I was wondering, these poems that you read, were they all part of summonings or guilt?
Oh, yes, they're all part of summonings.
Okay.
So summonings is a wide-ranging collection of poems, but holds as its central focus witch hunting in India. Yeah.
I'm really curious about how you got, what pulled you to this issue, because it's a very random thing to get drawn to, and it hasn't really been addressed in India much. I think in poetry, at least, I haven't seen this. And I'd applauded Yamini on her courage to take on big battles. And what I found in your poems as I was listening, you're not afraid to be vulnerable while you're addressing big issues. I just found a very poignant vulnerability throughout your poems, and that kind of just struck me hard. But I'd love to know how these poems found you, and how you decided to write about witchcraft.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very generous observations and lovely question. I have members of my distant family who believe in witches and who spent most of their upbringings in India, though they've all come to Canada or the States in the past 20 years or so. And I had kind of taken it for granted as part of, I feel like Indians were a little we have a little bit of a supernatural belief bent to us, and I never really thought critically about it until I was in the process of writing my first book, Guilt, and truly stumbled across an Al Jazeera article about the I can't remember the year, but India's most recent attempt to pass legislation to help curtail the occurrences of witch hunting. And it was, detailing sort of the village politics and dynamics. And why there's lack of trust in law enforcement, goes sort of all the way to the top in many ways. And I found that once I started looking into it, I felt like I couldn't put the topic down until I'd read more and more and more about it. I became obsessed with it, really, is what happened. Yeah, and things spiraled from there. The book began with persona poems, and then those led to poems where I was thinking about, okay, what does it mean to be engaging with persona as an art form? And I think the poems I've read tonight are kind of a third level of self-critical vulnerability, as you say, towards the act of exploring this subject matter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually a bit sad this reading's come to an end. It's been riveting, profound, absolutely a dive into the senses and issues. We're so thankful in this moment, I think, Pramila and I, that finally we were able to do this, and so grateful that we did. And we've just gotten to know a few more brilliant poets writing in the community. It's just really fantastic. Before we close out, I was wondering if there are any last questions from the audience. Do we have time, Pramila, for one or two, do you think? Or
Yeah,
do
we have time for a couple of questions.
Okay, and just before the questions, there's something I forgot to mention to Christine. After we do readings with Matwaala, and we do, as we've been doing since last year, we have a tie-up with a journal in the UK called Lucy's Writers Platform. And I'd like all of you to send me a poem. And it's a website that's associated with the University of Cambridge. The editor studied there, and what we do is we publish a little feature after each reading. So if you send me a poem, an unpublished poem, I'll send it across to Lucy's Writers Platform, and Hannah at some point will put up your bios and a poem by you. And if we have your permission from the editors, would love to do that. Any questions, anyone? Any observations, questions?
I'm sorry, I have a question. I was wondering, like, how does one get more involved with Matwaala? What would that look like? And involvement with the community?
Who's asking the question?
It was Meher. Sorry.
Meher. Oh, hi, Meher. Hi, Meher. Well, basically, what we do is we really began with a yearly festival. We loosely call it a festival, which could be a spate of readings. And our mission was to increase the visibility of South Asian poets in the US. But with BLM breaking out again, with the resurgence of the BLM about 2 years ago, I think we started introspecting on identity and what it was to be South Asian in this country. So we thought we had to extend a kind of a gesture of solidarity to other communities. So we started a Poets of Color, and for want of a better term, we kind of derived it from people of color, and we called it the Poets of Color series. And we've been hosting, various ethnicities. So we've had Native American, we've had African American. So I think we're going to need this year to finish those spate of readings. We're going to be doing Dalit, Asian American, and South and Central American. Those are what we have on the agenda for this year. And I think from next year onwards, we'll go back to a bit of South Asian profiling and creating, kind of bringing that platform back. Our 10th year is in 2025. So we're hoping, haven't thought too much about it, but I hope it's going to be a big, grand, beautiful festival with many faces. And we do these readings in partnership with colleges. So I'd love to talk with all of you one-on-one to see if we can bring these readings maybe to your campuses or colleges if that's a feasibility. You know, we've worked with NYU, Stony Brook, Hunter College, Austin Community College. Pramila is at Nassau Community College, and that's, so it's kind of a satellite mission. So instead of being static and having people come to us, we want to expose faculty and students to South Asian writers. So we thought the best thing is to take the readings to the campuses. And I live in Austin. Pramila lives in the New York area in Long Island. And that's how we've been, you know, we became kind of, you know, the satellite notion was very, very deliberate. So if any of you are, you know, willing to explore this idea of holding a mini fest, and you have the budget and the funding, you know, we can bring a kind of a, you know, a slew of poets to you, and that's something I'd love to explore. A one-on-one later, we can do that, and we will keep you informed. And we really hope we can showcase all of you again. It was such a delight and really an honor to listen to you this evening. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Yes, and our website's here. Yeah. Thank you, Christine and Randy, though we haven't seen him today, and Alicia. Thank you very much. Bye.